Okay, let's dive into this incredible ancient story about a kingdom that's about to fall apart. And the whole thing kicks off not with an act of war, but with an act of forgiveness. Or, well, something that looked like forgiveness. It was really just a performance, a hollow peace. So, what we're looking at here is a real high stakes political drama. It's about a forced reconciliation, one that was cooked up through pure manipulation, that didn't heal a thing. In fact, it did the opposite. It basically set the stage for a devastating civil war. All right, so our story starts with a really powerful king, King David, and he finds himself completely and utterly paralyzed by an impossible choice. I mean, just imagine this. On one hand, he's a father, he's heartbroken, and he desperately misses his son. But on the other hand, he's the king. He has a duty to uphold the law of the land, no exceptions. He's caught between his heart and his crown, and he's just stuck, frozen, can't move forward. And look, the crime itself was serious. Absalom, his son, had murdered his own half-brother and then fled the kingdom. So now, 3 years have passed. David's initial white-hot rage has kind of cooled down, and now it's just this deep, aching longing to see his son again. But still, as king, his hands are tied. He just can't bring himself to act. And this is where the story gets really interesting. The king's top general, a guy named Joab, he sees the king stuck in this paralysis, and he doesn't see a problem. He sees an opportunity, a chance to solve the king's dilemma for him. You see, Joab wasn't just a military commander, he was a master politician. He was an expert in what you might call bodyguarding the mood. He could sense his boss's unspoken desires, his inner turmoil. He knew David desperately wanted Absalom back, but couldn't bring himself to ask for it. So Joab comes up with this brilliant and deeply manipulative plan to give the king exactly what he wanted without him ever having to ask. It was basically an elaborate piece of political theater. He hires a clever actress and feeds her a story, a manufactured tragedy that just so happens to mirror David's own situation almost perfectly. The whole goal was to trap the king with his own words, to force him to make an emotional ruling that he'd then have no choice but to apply to his own life. And the trap worked beautifully. David falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. He passionately swears he'll protect the woman's son. And that's when she springs the trap. She completely turns the tables, exposing the king's own hypocrisy. How could he show mercy to a total stranger but leave his own son, a prince, to waste away in exile? So Joab's big plan works. David, totally cornered by his own promise, orders Absalom to be brought back to Jerusalem. But this was anything but a happy reunion. It was a homecoming in name only. David had given in to the political pressure, sure, but his heart hadn't yielded one bit. As a king, he brought his son home, but as a father, he was nowhere near ready to forgive. So he allows Absalom back into the city, but forbids him from ever seeing his face. And this goes on for 2 long, silent years. Absalom is just living in Jerusalem like a ghost. He's not really a prisoner, but he's certainly not a prince. He's just stuck in this political and emotional limbo. And all that time, his heart didn't soften up with gratitude. No, it hardened with bitterness and resentment. So he's stuck in this frustrating state of non-existence. And to top it all off, he's being totally ignored by Joab, the very guy who brought him back in the first place. Absalom's patience finally just snaps. Absalom tries to get a meeting with Joab, probably thinking Joab could go talk to the king for him again. But Joab just ghosts him. Why? Because Joab's a political animal. He could see David had no real intention of ever restoring Absalom. The prince wasn't politically useful anymore, so as far as Joab was concerned, he was yesterday's news. Pushed right to the brink, Absalom decides to do something desperate. He turns to coercion. If a polite request won't get him a meeting, well, maybe destroying Joab's property will get his attention. And you know what? It worked. A furious Joab storms over demanding to know what's going on. And that's when Absalom gives him an ultimatum to deliver to the king. Tell him to either see me or kill me. Anything is better than this, he says. Why did I even come back? Let me see the king's face. And if I'm guilty, then let him put me to death. This intense pressure campaign finally breaks the stalemate. It forces that long-awaited meeting between the king and the prince, the father and the son. So when they finally meet, all the motions are there. Absalom bows, which is a sign of political submission. King David kisses him, a public act of political acceptance. But notice what's missing. There are no tears. There are no words of repentance from Absalom, and there's no genuine forgiveness from David. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a peace treaty. When you step back and look at it, this whole tragedy was just fueled by flawed human strategies. You've got Joab using manipulation, his clever little play. You have David using avoidance, hoping 2 years of silence would just make it go away. And then you've got Absalom using coercion, literally lighting a fire to force his will on everyone. And every single one of these schemes just made things worse. And that's really the core lesson here. A hollow peace, when you get through scheming and pressure, it doesn't resolve a conflict. All it does is paper over the cracks, creating the perfect conditions for all that resentment to fester and grow into a full-blown rebellion that would soon tear the whole kingdom apart. So this story leaves us with this really powerful and kind of unsettling question. In our own lives, when we're dealing with deep conflict, which path is worse? The path of avoidance, where you just let a wound fester in silence? Or the path of forcing a solution that has no real heart behind it? It's definitely something to think about.